The influence of tonal range on depth. The strategic use of tonal range, or the gradation of light and dark values, is a powerful tool for creating a sense of depth and spatial dimension in artistic compositions. By carefully controlling the tonal relationships between elements in a painting or drawing, artists can guide the viewer's eye through the scene and convey a strong impression of three-dimensional space. The hypothesis controlled tonal range, the thoughtful manipulation of tonal values, from the lightest highlights to the deepest shadows, can contribute to the illusion of depth in a composition. Spatial depth. By strategically placing tones, artists can create a sense of distance and three-dimensional space, guiding the viewer's eye through the scene. Exploring tonal depth. Foreground. Establish the closest elements with bold, high-contrast tones. Midground. Create a gradual transition of tonal values to suggest depth. Background. Use softer, more muted tones to push distant elements into the background. Analyzing tonal depth. Landscapes. Observe how landscape artists use tonal range to convey depth, with foreground elements in bold tones and background elements in soft, hazy values. Portrait. Similarly, portrait painters leverage tonal gradations to create a sense of three-dimensional form and spatial relationship between the subject and background. Tonal range in landscape. Foreground contrast. Prominent, high-contrast elements in the foreground draw the viewer's eye into the scene. Midground transition. Gradual tonal transitions create a sense of depth and distance in the middle ground. Background softness. Distant elements are rendered with softer, more muted tones, receding into the background. Depth through tonal range. Foreground contrast. Bold tones and high contrast in the foreground anchor the viewer's eye and create a sense of depth. Midground transition. Gradual tonal shifts in the midground lead the eye deeper into the scene. Background softness. Distant elements in the background are rendered with muted, hazy tones, receding into the distance. Tonal range in portraiture. Focal point. The subject's face is rendered with high contrast and sharp details, drawing the viewer's attention. Midground. The body and clothing are painted with softer, more subtle tones, creating a sense of three-dimensional form. Background. The background is painted with hazy, muted tones, receding into the distance and framing the subject. Depth in portraiture. Focal point. The subject's face is rendered with high contrast and sharp details, drawing the viewer's attention. The subject's face is rendered with high contrast and sharp details, drawing the viewer's attention. Midground. The body and clothing are painted with softer, more subtle tones, creating a sense of three-dimensional form. Background. The background is painted with hazy, muted tones, receding into the distance and framing the subject. Principles of tonal depth. Foreground contrast. Bold, high contrast tones establish the closest elements. Midground transition. Gradual tonal shifts suggest depth and distance. Background softness. Muted, hazy tones push distant elements into the background. In conclusion, the strategic manipulation of tonal range, from bold contrasts to soft gradients, is a powerful tool for creating depth and three-dimensional space in artistic compositions. By carefully controlling the relationships between light and dark values, artists can guide the viewer's eye through the scene and convey a strong sense of spatial depth